Alisha. Hi YouTube, and welcome to my story of how Sawyer arrived. It all started, let's see, I should rewind a little bit and explain my story a little bit for those who are just joining. So this is my third baby. I had two previous C-sections. One was medically necessary. The second was just a repeat C-section, and now my third, I was really debating on VBAC, vaginal birth after C-section, or just going for another C-section. In the end, because of my situation, I decided for a C-section, which was scheduled for March 24th, 2015, but that kind of changed because a week before I had Sawyer, it was around March, what is that, like 15th or something like that, I lost part of my mucus plug. Are you peeking in on me?
No. Okay.
Hi.
Bye.
So, yeah, I lost part of my mucus plug. And to be quite honest, this is going to be like TMI, but we all know how babies are made. And my husband just got home, and I think sex kind of induced me. It had been a long time, and so, anywho, you can imagine, or don't imagine, that's weird. You can kind of guess what happened. So, around Tuesday, a week before my scheduled C-section, I lost part of my mucus plug, and kind of the rest of the week I started having like lower back cramps, just being really uncomfortable, having Braxton Hicks that started becoming uncomfortable, feeling nauseous, actually having a lot of diarrhea. And it was Sunday, March 22nd, about 5 in the morning. I went to the bathroom. And, well, I woke up feeling very strange, just like, I don't know, like something was in the air, you know what I mean? Just something wasn't right. And being very pregnant, of course, you pee all the time throughout the night. So I got up and I felt wet. And I was like, that's really weird. And I felt very wet. Enough where in my half sleep, I felt the bed to see if I peed the bed. That's what I thought. I thought I peed myself. I went to the bathroom, and I'm half asleep. I'm still like very out of it. And I sat down on the toilet, and then it was just like a gush. And it was not a lot. It was just enough for me to fully wake up. And I was like, what was that? And my heart kind of sunk because, I don't know, you always think the worst. And then I started peeing, and I looked in the toilet, and I didn't see anything. And I was like, okay. And then I looked down at my underwear, and my underwear is just wet. And I was like, what the heck? And then I stood up, and I was dripping. And then I walked out, and I'm just dripping. It's just like drip, 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 drip. And I was like, what is going on? And then it finally clicked in my head. Oh my gosh, I think my water just broke. It took me a long time because with my other two kids, I never went into labor. I never really had contractions. My water never broke with either one of them. So this is my first time actually having signs of labor. And so, yeah, I woke up Zach and I said, Zach, I think my water's breaking. And he came in, and at that point, I have no pants on now. I'm standing over a towel because I didn't want to make a mess. And he could see that I'm dripping. Yeah, I started freaking out a little bit, called the hospital, and they said, you need to come in. So we ended up calling, my mother-in-law was flying in the next day to take care of the kids while I have my C-section. So she wasn't here yet at this point. So we called up our friends. We had a backup plan. We called up our friends and they said, bring the kids over. And so we first dropped the kids. We woke the kids up and dropped them off at our friend's house. And then we headed off to the hospital. And I was not admitted yet. I actually called my hospital and said, you know, I'm scheduled for a C-section. Is my doctor going to be there in case I have to have a C-section? And they said, no, sorry, she won't be here. And I was like, what? Are you kidding me? I was really disappointed. Get to the hospital, they check me in, and they start instantly running tests. So first, I get a vaginal exam, and it's also, by the way, like 5 different doctors, all male doctors too, which I thought was very funny. 5 different doctors come in, and I only recognize one of them. Well, 2 of them. I recognize 2 of them. One of them I had seen before at one of my just appointments, and the second one I seen when I had like a labor and delivery scare where I thought my water had broke earlier on. So all these male doctors are coming in and talking to me, and I have a vaginal exam. They run the test, and sure enough, I broke my water. But the problem is that my cervix is just a fingertip dilated, and it's high and tight. They are having a hard time reaching my cervix. Like, I'm not kidding you. Like, they were like in there trying to get my cervix. So that's not a good thing. They say it's not a good thing because if your water breaks and you're not progressing in labor, there's now chances for infection because that water is what protects you and baby. But as soon as that breaks, you know, the baby and you are exposed. And then they said, so what do you want to do? We need to get this baby out. And I said, well, aren't I just going to have a C-section? And that all those doctors looked at me like, well, why don't you try for vaginal? And I just didn't think for some reason that, you know, you already have a game plan in your head. But then I started thinking about it, and Zach started thinking about it, and it's like, why not? You know, why not try for a vaginal? Part of the reasons why I didn't want to try for a vaginal is because I wasn't sure if Zach was going to be able to be there. I didn't know who was going to take care of my kids if Zach wasn't there. But we already had all those concerns of mine were taken care of. So I said, all right, let's go for it. So, and the doctors were really, they really were encouraging of a vaginal birth, and I felt like I have so much support, and I got really excited. So they admitted me to the hospital, and they brought me to the room, and the game plan, the plan of action at this point was to wait 2 hours and see if my body will progress on its own. If I become more than a fingertip dilated, then at that point they'll start Pitocin, and then we'll see how Pitocin does, and if Pitocin doesn't do anything or doesn't do anything fast enough, then we were going to do the Foley bulb. And I said, okay. And at this point, I was feeling a little bit of contractions, but not anything that was painful, and honestly probably wasn't doing much of anything. So I laid in that bed and for 2 hours, and I wasn't progressing. Nothing was really happening. So all of a sudden, oh, before I say this, I forgot a crucial point of my day. So while I was waiting, before we started any induction procedures, they were trying to get an IV into my hand or my arm, because in case I have to go into surgery or whatever it may be. It was one of the worst parts of the day. It took like 6 different individuals, and they tried everywhere. Actually my bruising is gone. I was so dehydrated because, I just woke up that morning and I didn't eat anything, I didn't drink anything, I just went straight to the hospital. But they tried here. I mean, I was bruised all the way up to my elbow with puncture holes, and it's painful to try to get an IV, and it's not just an IV, it's like the size of a straw. I mean, an ultrasound at one point was brought in, an officer, a nurse was brought in, and he tried and he failed. Finally, ended up being the anesthesiologist came in with an ultrasound right here on the side here and got that IV in. And so back to what I was saying. Oh, and I should say that the one doctor that was not at all supportive of me trying for vaginal birth was the anesthesiologist. He did not have very good bedside manner, and you could tell that he did not support me trying for a vaginal birth. He pissed me off. At first, he pissed me off. So, got my IV in and just sat for 2 hours and waited. Then the doctors come in, check me again, and I'm not making any progress. So, all of a sudden, they changed their mind, which this totally surprised me. They said, well, first, we're actually going to start the Foley bulb. And he said that they changed their mind. Basically, all these doctors, I believe there was like 5 or 6 of them, had a meeting about my case. And all these doctors decided to go with a different plan. And the new plan now was to do the Foley bulb first, keep monitoring me, checking on me, see how I do. Once the Foley bulb falls out, they will start Pitocin, and then I can get my epidural. And I said, okay. And I'm really nervous. I don't know what it's like to have strong contractions. And I didn't know anything about the Foley bulb. And honestly, if I knew about what the Foley bulb does, I wouldn't have done it. For sure wouldn't have done it. So they come in and do the Foley bulb. Now, if you guys don't know what the Foley bulb is, what it is they insert, it's a catheter. So they insert this Foley bulb into my cervix. Then, so imagine this is my cervix. So they insert it into my cervix. Then they fill this side like a balloon with saline. And then they tie a string to it and hang some sort of something that's like a weight. They used a saline bag. So they tied a string, tied a saline bag to the end, and hung it off the end of my bed. And I was like, what the hell is this? I've never, it was like some sort of form of torture. Like they just jimmy rigged this thing up to dilate my cervix. I've never heard anything like it. I really didn't think that they did stuff like this anymore. So I have this balloon now in my cervix. And what it does is it's going to put pressure on my cervix. And hopefully the hope is that it's going to dilate me and thin me out. So once this Foley bulb falls out of my cervix, that means that the cervix is dilated to around 3 or 4 centimeters. I said, okay, this shouldn't take long. They put it in there, and then they decided that maybe we should put another balloon. So that was in there for like 15 minutes, and then they come in again. And then they decided to put another bulb on this side of the cervix. So now I have one bulb full of saline, and now I have 2 Foley bulbs of saline. So one on each side. So basically that, with hopes of the 2 balloons, it would thin me out. Just thin out my cervix on top of dilating it. So I instantly, as soon as they filled up the second Foley bulb, I could feel the pressure. They said it's going to feel like when you're 10 centimeters dilated in labor and the baby's head is pushing against the cervix. That's what it's going to feel like. That you feel like you have to poop, and it's going to be a lot of pressure down there. And let me tell you, it was so much pressure. It was painful. It was unbearable. And I can't get an epidural. I cannot get an epidural. So for 5 hours, I was in the most pain I've ever been in my entire life. And only way that I think the Foley bulb and that pressure would have been manageable is if I could move around, and I couldn't, because they need to make sure that I'm having those contractions, and they need to make sure that Sawyer is okay. So I'm forced to lay on that bed with not moving and just feeling the pressure. And so I am breathing through my contractions. The contractions are happening now about every 3 to 4 minutes and lasting about a minute long. And I'm doing that for 5 hours. And it was a lot of pain. About the 4th hour, I call for the doctor and I say, you know, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I can't even breathe through, I can't talk through anything, and I'm becoming very moody at this point. I say, and Zach is being so great, you know, he's feeding me ice and dealing with my little attitude that I have going on. I was very quiet during it all until I was having that contraction. I was having a hard time being in my head, or I was in my head too much is what I was trying to say. Like, I would forget to breathe. I would start panicking a little bit. And so it took me a lot of practice to calm down when the pain was coming during the contraction and just breathe and just focus. So finally I started to get the hang of it, but that pressure was so bad, you guys. And I just couldn't deal with it. And then the 4th hour, they started Pitocin. So 4 hours with the Foley bulb, they started the Pitocin, and they told me that I can't have an epidural until I'm at least 6 centimeters dilated. And their reasoning for that was because they feared that my epidural would stop working. They told me that, and they started the Pitocin, and then contractions really, really, really started hurting. And it wasn't really the contractions. The contractions hurt, but it was more the pressure of the Foley bulb that I could not take. And the combination of them two, it was awful. And now during these contractions with the Pitocin, I started to get nauseous every contraction. It was just like I felt like I couldn't catch my breath because the contractions were happening so close together. And the pressure of that bulb, I started now tossing and turning, and the staff, the nurses were starting to get frustrated with me because they kept having to move those monitors around. And but I did not care because I was just trying to get comfortable, and no matter what I did, it wasn't comfortable. I basically was holding on to the bed, white knuckling it every contraction. And then I said, Zach, I don't want to do this anymore. And I said, I don't want to do this. This is a bad idea. And he goes, are you sure? And he was just trying to be encouraging. He knew that if I felt like I made the wrong decision, I would regret it. I want the doctor here now. So the doctor comes in, and I said, I don't want to do this. 2 doctors came in, and I said, I don't want to do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. And he goes, well, what do you want to do? And I said, what's the options? Can I get an epidural? Please, can I get an epidural? And he goes, no. And he goes, what we can do, we'll take that Foley bulb out, check your dilation, and just go from there. And I said, okay. And basically, they were going to take the Foley bulb out. If I wasn't dilated enough, they would put that Foley bulb back in and continue with what we were doing. Or I could stop the whole process and have a C-section. And I said, okay. And I hadn't made my mind up yet what I was going to do. So they took the Foley bulb out, and it was instant relief. As soon as that Foley bulb was out, I could talk again. I could breathe again. I was still feeling the contractions of the Pitocin, but I didn't have that pressure. And he checked me, and I was 2 centimeters dilated after 5 hours. And it was like instant disappointment. I was like, I'm only 2 centimeters dilated. They said that basically with the Foley bulb, you're supposed to dilate a centimeter an hour. And that wasn't happening for me. How the hell was I supposed to continue on with no epidural, no pain management at all, and keep going for another 5 hours if it continued the way it was. So at that point I decided I don't want to do this anymore. It's not worth it to me. I want a C-section. And worrisome when you're trying to have a vaginal birth after 2 C-sections. So they stopped Pitocin, and they stopped, the Foley bulb was out, so they stopped Pitocin, and they said, okay, let's get the ball rolling. Let's go have a C-section and get this baby out. And I was so happy with my choice. I was so excited. I'm going to cry because I knew I was going to go meet that baby. How ridiculous. I'm crying because pregnancy was really hard for me. Not the actual pregnancy, but emotionally being alone was really hard. And I just wanted to meet my baby so bad. Oh, I gotta get my shit together. I'm gonna pause you real quick. Okay. So, basically, I got my stuff together. I got it together. Basically, it was just like the finish line was finally in sight, and I could meet Sawyer. And I was just like so relieved, so excited, so happy, and proud of myself. Proud of myself that I tried for that vaginal birth. I had no regrets. And I don't, and I'm going to be stern about this to those haters out there. I don't want to hear, you could have done it. Why did you choose to do C-section? It doesn't matter what anybody thinks. I know in my heart that it was the right decision, and nobody was in my shoes, and nobody knew my situation completely. So I honestly don't care. I'm proud of myself for what I did. And that's all I'm going to say. So, it all started happening very quickly. And it's funny because they were like, oh, we're not in a hurry, you're fine. We'll let you guys relax. But it happened very quickly. Within 15 minutes, I was in the room, in the OR. Before that happened though, basically I had time to call my mother-in-law and my mom and say, it didn't work, I'm going in for C-section, I'll call you after. So, that's all the time I had. Zach stayed in the room, and my nurse, he was wonderful, by the way. I loved the entire staff so much. But this nurse, he walked me down the hall. I walked myself, and we walked down the hall, and right before we entered the OR, blood and saline came out, and I made a mess in the hallway. And I was like, I am so sorry. And he's like, no, it's fine. So we get into the OR, and there's that anesthesiologist that I hated earlier in the day. And he was so funny. I ended up really liking him a lot. And he sat on the bed, and I sat on the bed with my feet hanging off the side because I was getting ready to get my spinal. And he put his hands on my shoulder, and he goes, I'm so glad you made this decision. He goes, if you were my wife, I wouldn't have allowed you to have a vaginal birth after 2 C-sections. And he goes, I just felt like it was not a good idea. And I just thought it was so funny because it was just a totally different side of him than what I saw earlier. Earlier, he was angry. He was very aggressive with his opinion. And this time he was very warm and cuddly. So, it was funny. Usually I'd be very nervous for the spinal, but after going through the experience with the Foley bulb, I was like, I can handle anything. So, the spinal was nothing. He was very quick and easy, straight to the point, which I appreciated. And then they laid me down, and then I started to feel the tingling of the spinal going down my legs, which is a very nice feeling. It's really weird. I don't mind the feeling of it because the OR is very cold and I'm naked. The OR is very cold, and the feeling of the spinal is very warm. So it kind of keeps me warm and cuddly. Warm and cuddly, I said it again. So then they put the screen up over my face, which I really hated this time because the screen with the other two was like straight up and down. This screen kind of angled and was like right over my face, and you could see it in the video. And I got kind of claustrophobic, and I don't know why that was. I don't know if it's because the room was set up differently. I don't know. But I just remember thinking, God dang it, this thing is close to my face. And for those of you who are wondering, somebody made a comment like, how dare they strap you down? I wasn't strapped down. I just had my arms out. There was no straps around any one of my arms. This arm had the IV, so I was just keeping it very still, and this arm didn't have anything. He said, either you can rest your arm here or out. And I didn't want to move this arm because of the IV. So I wasn't strapped down. Then they put on the oxygen. Right after I got the oxygen, Zach came walking in. And only complaint is that he couldn't sit right next to me. He kind of had to sit over my shoulder behind me. I had to like reach back, and I couldn't really see him. And so I didn't like that very much because he is what keeps me calm. And then also I remember before I'm just numb down there. And I remember the mask didn't bother me. The oxygen mask didn't bother me. I was just so exhausted. I felt like I ran 10 miles. Like just so drained. And I think it's because of all those contractions I was having earlier. But I was having a hard time staying awake. At one point in the footage from my labor and delivery, Zach said to me, "Are you going to stay awake?" And I was really fighting it. I was having a hard time staying awake. But surgery was so quick. They opened me up, and he said everything looked really good in there. And I felt like I wasn't in surgery very long at all. It went very, very quick. Before I knew it, the pressure of them pulling him, and I cannot describe that feeling. It's it's something you've never felt before unless you're in a C-section. I mean, it feels what you think it would feel like they're pulling something out of me. And I felt a lot of pressure like on my rib cage. And I think it's because the doctors were maneuvering him out. And it turns out the doctor, I remember saying during or after surgery, he was talking to me. And he said, good thing you didn't try for this vaginal. That he believes that this baby would have gotten stuck because he was sunny side up. His face was up. He was not facing down. He was head first, but he was facing up. What I was saying is, yeah, he was facing up, and that explains all the back pain that I was having. So then about, I don't even know, 10 minutes after going into the OR and getting prepped, I had Sawyer, and they pulled him out, and he started crying instantly. And they pulled him over the table. Only issue that he had was he's really full of fluid. And when you have a C-section, that can happen. That probably will happen because during birth, during the vaginal birth, all the baby's fluid kind of gets squeezed out of him when he goes through that birth canal. Well, Sawyer didn't go through the birth canal, so he had a lot of fluid, and that is what you hear. They had to pat his back with this like rubber thing to get him crying a lot so they can get his lungs clear of the fluid. So and then Zach went over there, and I just basically hung out. I really just closed my eyes and listened to Zach, and I was looking for Zach's voice, and I was looking for Sawyer's cry. And that was like the best moment. I have yet to see my son. I didn't get to see him yet. And I'm not too upset about that. I really wanted to do skin to skin right after they pulled him out. But that was the plan that I discussed with Dr. Snyder. And the doctor that delivered Sawyer felt like it was more important to get the fluid out of his lungs than to put him on my chest. And I agree. I mean, I was okay with him going over there and doing that. So I was just like just laying there while Zach and Sawyer are on the other side of the room, just laying there, just totally like in bliss, just so happy, so excited to finally see him, and just relaxed while they're stitching me up. And I wasn't scared, and nothing. I mean, I was just so happy. And then finally they brought Sawyer over to me, and I got to feel his warm skin right next to my face, and I got to see his he just looked so much like Wyatt to me. It was just like looking at Wyatt all over again. And then I took off his little beanie and saw his red little hair, and I was just so happy. He opened his eyes for the first time when he heard my voice and felt me, and it was amazing. It was so good. And then after that happened, I went and I gave the go-ahead because they were stitching me up. They said, Sawyer will stay with you the whole time. And I said, no, it's okay. Have Zach bring him back to the room while they finish me up here. Because I wanted to do skin to skin as soon as possible. And so I don't know, I wanted them to do all those checks, those baby checks of his weight and all that stuff right away. So as soon as they got to the room, we could do skin to skin. And they had to do all those checks because he had so much fluid in his lungs. So I said, go ahead, Zach, you bring him back to the room. So they left, and I honestly took like a quick cat nap on the table. I did fall asleep when they were stitching me up because I was just so tired. And I probably was only in there for about 15 more minutes. And then they finally took down the screen, and the doctor was standing there, and the other doctor, the two main doctors were standing there, and they were all telling me how good I was, how great I looked. Everything went perfectly in surgery, and that they were really proud of me. And I started crying. I told them all, thank you so much. And it was a very warm feeling. It was not a cold relationship with the doctors, which I hate. It was very comfortable, and I was really, really relieved. So they wheeled me back to the room, and Sawyer weighed 7 pounds, 10 ounces, so just 2 ounces shy of what I predicted. He was my biggest baby, and he did look like his brother with light eyes and light hair. And Zach was like, you're right. And as soon as I got back in the room, I felt very alert. I felt great. I wasn't in a lot of pain. I wasn't groggy. Only thing that I was still numb from like belly button down. I was still numb with the spinal. But they brought Sawyer over to me, and I got to do skin to skin, and I finally got to hold my baby, and he was beautiful and perfect. And we started breastfeeding right away, and he latched on no problem. And he nursed for about half an hour on one side and half an hour on the other side. Excuse me. And it was fantastic. So that's my labor and delivery story. That's it, you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I love you all, and I'm so glad that I was able to share this journey with you. And don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. You'll still see me. It's been a little tough, obviously, with having a newborn and 2 other kids to take care of, and of course YouTube kind of falls down the priority list, but I still will be around. You will not miss me too much. I have lots of other videos coming up. I'm about to do an update video of Sawyer. He is now 1 month old. I can't believe it. So, yeah, that's it. Bye, you guys.